When he was a state senator, our Attorney General Eric Schneiderman was one of the leading voices in Albany on issues related to domestic violence. He couldn't join us tonight, but representing him is Gail Heatherly, who's the Bureau Chief of the Criminal Prosecutions Bureau at the Office of the New York State Attorney General. Please welcome Gail.
I recognize a lot of you here from approximately 24 or 25 years of doing domestic violence work, and I applaud you all for still doing it. God bless. It's an honor for me to represent New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman at this important event. The many people standing here tonight have made a steadfast commitment to fighting the plague of domestic violence. And together we have made tremendous progress. Without your help, particularly those of the social service providers, many of whom I see here today, we could not have done it. And we really applaud your efforts. Thank you so much for everything that you do. In addition to raising awareness and community support for campaigns like Shine the Light on Domestic Violence, we have secured significant legislative tools in the fight against domestic abuse. Just last year, then Senator Schneiderman proposed and passed the Anti-Strangulation Act of 2010. This important piece of legislation strengthened the penal law and increased penalties against anyone who prevents the breathing of another person. This was a huge victory in law enforcement as it provided appropriate enforcement against one of the most common kind of assaults in domestic abuse. And I agree with District Attorney Vance, we really need to have better legislation out there, and this was one of the most important pieces that was passed just last year. The Attorney General's office has long supported the fight against partner abuse and the impact that it has on victims, families, and children, from ensuring that laws like this Anti-Strangulation Act are enforced, and also keeping guns away from domestic abusers and other criminals. It's an important thing to make that happen. There is, of course, much more work to do to make sure that individuals and families are safe in their own homes from the lethal consequences of domestic violence. We in the Attorney General's office look forward to continuing our work with the community partners, advocates, the legislature, and the governor to make this a top public safety priority in the state of New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Funding.
Two state legislators stand out in their steadfast commitment on this issue. And when they go to Albany every day, they're passing bills, introducing legislation, and really fighting the good fight. I'd like to welcome State Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal, who represents a part of Times Square and has emerged as a real leader on this issue. Linda, please come up.
I represent the Upper West Side and parts of Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan. And I'm here today because I support the important work that all of you do, both as victims who are recovering and as social service organizations who help victims learn that it's not their fault. And they have a right to be out here and live their lives like anyone else. I also would like to commend Governor Cuomo for all of his work dedicating an office to domestic violence, our Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, and of course our great DA Cyrus Vance, with whom I am working on legislation that would further protect victims and put away the people who commit the crimes. You know, I care deeply about domestic violence, so I don't know if all of you heard, but Topeka, Kansas just decriminalized domestic violence because of a budget dispute in that state. And using victims and survivors of domestic violence as a pawn in a game to balance budgets is reprehensible. Now, I can assure you that although times are tough, we know that in New York State, we will never abandon victims of domestic violence. We will continue to help them. And I'd like to thank our wonderful Borough President, Scott Stringer, for pulling us together tonight here in Times Square. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. He cares so much about this issue that he came all the way from Brooklyn to make his statement. He's a wonderful, progressive, activist assembly member who has a great citywide perspective. Please welcome Assembly Member Felix Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President, and I would like also to commend you for bringing not only the service provider, but for bringing government to the people. And when you have a Board of President with the kind of vision that he has, and I served with him in the Assembly, so I know the vision that he has. And I understand by bringing people together, bringing the government to the people, bringing the service provider to work together, this is the way how government should operate. Having the district attorney standing here to make a statement about the importance of what we need to do in Albany to strengthen the laws in domestic violence. Domestic violence is an issue that does not discriminate against anyone. This happens whether we're white, we're Hispanic, we're African American, we're Asian, we're poor, we're rich, or we're in the middle. We need to tackle this issue. This issue has no place in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and in our community. Furthermore, in our state and in our nation. I think it's very important as we continue to move forward, and I've been reading that sign for the longest. Shine the light on domestic violence, and let's go and shine the light. Thank you, and God bless you.
We just have a couple of speakers. They're very important, but I want to call up the chair of the Times Square Advertising Coalition. These signs are not cheap, right? This is Times Square, center of the universe. So when we use a sign to promote good, someone has to absorb the cost. Please welcome Alan Hyde, the chair of the Times Square Advertising Coalition.
Thank you, Scott. I'll make my comments very brief. Thank you, everyone. And on behalf of the Times Square Advertising Coalition and all of its members, we're very proud and happy to be able to support the challenges surrounding domestic violence. What better place than Times Square, the brightest place in the world, to shine a light on such an important issue. So thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Now, our last speaker is the most important speaker, because the reason we're here today is to make policy, make legislation, create programs that talk about prevention. We're here today because we want to create real change. And October is not a period to step back and just have these events, but we need an action plan, and we need to be successful in our struggle. But the person who's going to speak now is somebody who can talk to you firsthand about how important what we're doing here tonight is. And I am very proud that Tanya McLeod, senior organizer of Voices of Women Organizing Project and a DV survivor herself, is here today to be with us, to talk to us, to educate us, and to work with us in the future. So Tanya, please come up.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer, for shining a light on domestic violence.
Yes, yes.
We want to send a message to the community that we will not tolerate domestic violence. Someone today has seen a light of hope because of what we're doing here.
Yes.
Police sirens screamed loudly as my children and I were escorted home to collect our belongings. We were being placed in a witness protection program in order to escape the physical, mental, financial, and social abuse inflicted by my ex-husband.
Yes.
He murdered our pet dog and showed signs of following through with his threat to end my life. I made a vow to turn my pain into power as I began my fight for justice. I joined the Voices of Women Organizing Project, known as VOW, which brings together survivors of domestic violence to improve the systems abused women and their children turn to for safety and justice. Vow to take a stand against domestic violence. Shine the light on domestic violence. We say no more violence against women. Shine the light. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Come on, let's give her a big round of applause.
Yes.